My name is Andrew Glazier. I'm the president and CEO at Defy Ventures. We are a national nonprofit, and we provide an entrepreneurship-based rehabilitative programming for currently and formerly incarcerated adults, as well as business acceleration and continued support for folks after they release from prison. With me today is a best-selling author, Quan Huynh, who has been described as a mighty warrior, a magician, and a mountain of goodness, and I know him to be all those things. He's also happens to be the senior post-release manager for Defy Ventures. After spending 22 years in and out of correctional institutions, Quan was paroled from a life sentence in 2015 and created his first company 6 months later. The following year, he received the Peace Fellowship Award for his work with the Alternatives to Violence Project. Quan has been featured in Entrepreneur, spoken at One Last Talk, and has appeared on numerous podcasts. And today he's here to talk to us about his new book, Sparrow in the Razor Wire. Oops, it is disappearing into my virtual background. There we go. Which came on for sale on Amazon just this past Tuesday. And we're going to be talking with Quan about his book today. Quan, welcome.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, everybody.
So first of all, I really enjoyed this book. It was a book I started a couple weeks ago, and it was a page turner for me. I got through it pretty quickly. But I wanted to ask you, why did you write this book?
Well, there's several. I wrote the book for men that are doing long or life-term sentences. Why I wrote the book? Well, there was. I was asked to write the book, to begin writing my book after I did my One Last Talk by Tucker Max. That's how we became really good friends there at the One Last Talk retreat. That's when he approached me and says, you can make a bigger impact. If you want to scale out what you just did here on this stage, I could help you do this. Do you really want to help the guys inside? Do you really want to give back? So I said yes. But then I even remember I started writing my book in January of 2019. About a week or two before I flew out to Austin to begin writing my book, I had actually messaged Tucker and I told him, you know what, I don't think I have a story. I'm not sure, I don't know who I'm gonna be writing this for. And for those of you that know Tucker Max or know him from his books, he just told me in his Tucker Max fashion, Quan, shut the fuck up and just bring your ass out to Austin. Your story's already told. Just come out here and we'll get it out of you. And yeah, so and they did. They helped me put it together and write my story.
All right. Well, so what was that process like for you? I've never written a book myself. I've talked to a few people who've written books, and I know it is a deeply personal process to go through writing, particularly writing about yourself and the subject you're writing about. So I'm curious what that process was like for you, and also what did you discover about yourself while you were writing it?
Well, when we laid out a process in Austin where I committed to 1 hour a day, 6 days a week, and I had a commitment of 250 words a day. I laid out the outline and I just stuck to it. We had our weekly coaching calls, and even after all the work that I did in prison, I just realized in writing the book, it was very therapeutic. I still discovered so much about myself. There were a lot of times, like, I remember when I had to write about the times of juvenile hall and going back to my early years of getting involved with the gangs. I just remember thinking every part of my being had wanted out of prison, but why am I placing myself back in this? And I just had to remind myself, this is for the guys. It's not about me. I just have to write this for the guys in there. And that's what really kept me going when I was writing it. So it ran the spectrum of all different emotions. It was painful. It was liberating. It was healing. That's all I could say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things I really enjoyed about the book was the way that you weave together all these different parts of your life and how all those experiences kind of fit into this arc of this transformative journey that you have been on and are still on. I'd love for you to read a passage from that first part of your life. I think you've got one picked out. Would you go ahead and read that now?
Sure. Yeah, this is here, I'll read it right out here. It's still when I lived in Utah, so it says right here. Okay, so my earliest memory of anger and shame goes back to when I was 8 years old. It was a hot summer in Provo, Utah. The snow melt had filled the ditches with fresh stream water. My younger brother and I would build rafts out of popsicle sticks and float our G.I. Joe action figures down imaginary river rapids. We chased rafts downstream in flip-flops and shorts, icy water almost up to our knees. It was a welcome relief from the hot sun beating down on us. Some older kids and what looked like adults were on a fence at the top of the ditch. They began throwing rocks down at us, and one of them yelled, "Go back to your country." This was not the first time we were teased for our race. This day, though, we felt brave because the fence was high and they seemed so far away. "Come and make us," we yelled back. They jumped the fence and made their way down one side of the ditch. We grabbed our action figures and homemade rafts and clambered up the other side. The adults at the fence began cheering, and we ran as fast as possible. Somewhere along the way, I dropped my action figures and stopped to pick them up. My younger brother turned to face our aggressors, and they pushed him to the ground. He tried to fight back until one of the older kids punched him in the face, and he rolled over. They held his face to the ground and shoved dirt in his mouth. In between choking and crying, he looked up at me for help. I stood in fear and did nothing. We both walked home crying, our faces covered in dust, broken up by the tracks of our tears. When my father found out what happened, he looked at me in his quiet way. "How could you let this happen to your younger brother? You were supposed to protect your family." I felt ashamed that I had let my family down.
Yeah, thanks. I feel so much going on in there, between, your relationship with your brother and your father and the expectations of your father and, the experience with, just racism and deep sort of meanness. How do all the, you talk about a number of experiences in the book. This seems like it was one of the ones that really seemed to stick with you. Talk a little bit about why and how this continued to resonate through your life and why you chose to write about it.
Yeah, sure. I remember after that incident, my father never spoke about it again, which in my mind at the time made it worse. My brother never spoke about it, and that made it worse. I'm pretty sure in their mind, like my father, I know totally forgave me, but for myself, I just still felt so deeply ashamed. Like, how could I let my younger brother, my dad's going to look down on me. I let my family down. And I just told myself, I have to protect my family. I'm not going to let this ever happen again. And that incident in my mind, like, made my bond with my brother so close. I mean, we ended up, that was my best friend, and we just grew up, and I always wanted to protect him, and he was always wanted to protect me. And it was something that I had pushed away and hid, and I never really faced it. And I didn't talk about that for years. I never told anybody about it, but I figured, I know this is where this sense of wanting to help out my family came from. And, it's that same sense of protecting my family, which I later extended into my game. This is my extended family now, and I'm going to protect them at all costs.
And how do you feel like not talking about that for so long, but obviously it was there, right? How is that a contributor for you in the next 10 years, 15 years after that experience?
Well, I just shoved it into a dark corner, and I just didn't want to face, like, okay, I'm a coward. I didn't want to help out my younger brother, but now when there's an opportunity to try to prove it, then I'm going to overcompensate and go over, above, and beyond to protect or to not face that shame.
Yeah. I could feel that, in reading the book and in reading your participation in the gang lifestyle and going down that path of violence. having come out of the other side of that, I'm curious, has the meaning of that incident changed for you in any way? Does it resonate with you differently now than, say, even though you may not have thought about it? How do you assign meaning to it now, or has that changed at all, or maybe it hasn't at all?
Well, I mean, I look at it now. I mean, I don't know, that incident also made me very angry towards just other races in general, particularly whites. And there was always a chip on my shoulder when, our first arrest was, we got arrested because some skinhead had called my house and threatened to kill my family. So I felt justified in, throughout my high school years, if there are white kids that profess to be racist, then those are the ones that we would want to fight with. And we wanted to prove ourselves with them. Now it's just, when I look back, it's just, these were angry, lost kids that were raised wrong. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't, yeah, it's just something that had happened to me back then. And yeah, was it cool? Absolutely not. Especially just seeing your younger brother, getting beat up like that.
Do you feel like, you talk about anger and shame, right? That's your earliest recollection of anger and shame. And that's I think learning to deal with that seems like that was, a theme of your book. How do you feel like where are you now with that anger and that shame? I mean, how have you learned what do you do with it now? Right. I mean, is that still...
yeah. I mean, of course, I'm human. I'm still going to face anger. I'm still going to face shame. I think now it's just, I don't shove it into a corner. I could acknowledge this is what I'm feeling, be okay with it, and then let it go, or start processing it with myself. So it just depends. Let's say, shame is not the one it's the anger. It's, it's somebody cuts in front of me in line at Costco or something and knows that I was there. I could become frustrated and angry, but it's not okay. I don't have to prove myself to them. Okay, then once I see that, okay, this man must obviously be in a bigger need, or he's he must have a lot going on in his life to just not acknowledge people around him and just cut people off. So when I look at it like that, okay, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Well, it's in that continuing on this discussion of moving through your life and kind of starting to find new ways to approach that anger and shame. I know you have a passage which is where the title of the book comes from, the sparrow and the razor wire, where you hear that sparrow. Would you mind reading that passage for us?
Sure. Yeah, this is like in the middle of my probably the 10th or 12th year of my prison sentence, when I would say my process of transformation was beginning. So let me see, here it is. Okay. One morning, I was called out for a medical appointment. I stood near one of the big mechanical gates that kept the individual yards separated from each other. A couple of men waited for the officer in the gun tower to open up the gate. I leaned on the fence, the razor wire above me. The morning was cold and crisp, and the sun started peeking over the nearby hills. My mind had that serene peacefulness that always came over me from prayer and meditation. I was thinking about how I could apply lessons from books I was reading in my life. The legacies of the saints were on my mind, and I thought to myself, why could I not also leave a legacy from in here, even if I am to die in prison? It dawned on me that I could. Prison did not have to be this harsh, ugly place of punishment, but a place where I could remake myself. It was a subtle shift in my view of prison, but it was all the difference in the world. Suddenly, I felt the warmth from the sun radiate throughout my body, and I noticed the dew on the individual blades of grass. Up above me in the razor wire, I heard the chirp of a sparrow. I looked up, and there it was, perched between the circular coils of the shiny razor wire. It was dark brown with uneven white streaks. I noticed it was missing the lower part of one leg, and on the other, had only 3 claws instead of 4. It was obvious it had lost a claw and limb from landing on the razor wire. Yet, with all the scarring and deformities, the sparrow still perched proud, singing for whoever was listening. A sense of inner joy washed over me. I then noticed signs of life all around me. Plants and flowers were in bloom. I breathed in the fresh smell of morning. Some kind of insects were buzzing around the fading light of a light pole, the same light poles that cast the eerie fluorescent yellow over every prison yard at nighttime. In the distance, I spotted a hawk circling, already on the hunt for the day. I looked up at the razor wire again, and a second sparrow had landed near the first one. This one was also scarred, with a lump where one of his claws used to be. They were both singing. All these years they have been singing, and I have not been listening, I thought to myself. I looked at the men nearby, and nobody seemed to notice anything. None of us have been listening.
So, this was obviously a really super pivotal moment for you in your life and in your book. And in your book, you talk about things that were happening to you as you got to that moment. But I also know you well enough to know that you probably could have written a book that was 3 times this length with what had been going on in your life. Can you tell us a little more about what was going on with you? 6 months, 12 months, maybe 18 months. Like what was happening in the lead up to this moment where you suddenly were able to open yourself to hear the sparrow? What made this moment possible? And what happened before the guy?
Yeah, sure. Several things, and I didn't really put much of it into the book because I figured I wanted to keep this. It was all around the same time, like probably 6-12 months leading up to this moment was I received a letter from home from my brother, and it was a picture of my little niece that was born, and she looked exactly like how my brother did as a child, and it just took me back to childhood. Like she was so adorable, and I thought to myself, why, like what happened to my life? I remember me and him just as little kids in Utah, like what happened? Like why am I doing a life sentence now? That happened. My father's father passed away. I found out about that, and then that also reminded me about my own father. I think by that time I was 35, 36, and I started thinking about my father during his time on earth. What was it, 38 years that he lived, 38, 39 years, and the impact that he had already made on many people's lives. And I contrasted that with my own path of death and pain and destruction. Also, I had gotten in trouble with I had gotten a bunch of write-ups, so they basically put me C status. I was supposed to go to the hole for 270 days, but then...
Sorry, C status means, and the hole is?
Program failure. So they said I was a program failure, and I was supposed to be sent to the hole for 9 months in the hole. But because...
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
solitary. But because, yes, the solitary confinement. But because my write-ups were not considered violent, and the hole was already filled with people that are in there for violence, they just removed me out of my dorm and put me down into a dorm that was right in front of the officer's podium, and they could watch me. And they just said I can only get out of my dorm to shower. Like I had an hour to just get out to shower and maybe get a little recreation in out in the yard, then I have to come back in. And I remember just sitting down there. I had seen leading up to it, there were several. Before that, I had moved up into a dorm. It was basically considered an honor dorm. It was when I first went in there, I got to that prison, and in prison, you can buy a bunk. Like I wanted to go up into that corner because I was still involved with hustling and still involved with a lot of the illegal activities, but I wanted to get into a dorm which was considered with men that were programming, so I could just basically be out of the way of the officers. When they put me down in that dorm, after I went C status, I can't remember, one of the days I looked up into that dorm and I go, oh, I remember when I first came into that dorm like 3 years ago, all those guys that were trying to do the right thing have been released, except for one other guy and me. The other guy was one guy that I looked like, that's an angry guy. He's always angry. And it made me think, what am I doing here? Like what's going on? And what does this say that I am still here with just the angry guy? And Yeah.
Yeah. What were you doing that got you? What was the infraction that got you sent to solitary?
It was multiple write-ups, cell phones, tobacco. They suspected me of gambling, but they couldn't pin that on me. Yeah, it was multiple write-ups.
So it's an interesting switch there, right? That happened in a relatively short period of time. Is that right? I mean, it wasn't like it was, you had this thought and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, I want to start thinking differently, because
No.
6 months prior you had been hustling successfully, it sounds like, cell phones and tobacco. And, I think a lot of people don't realize there's a flourishing underground economy in prison with fairly large amounts of cash changing hands.
Yeah.
I mean, did you feel like a success when you were doing that?
I did. In my, I mean, remember during that time, there's this narrative that I had told myself, like, okay, I'm a gang member, I'm a hustler, I can walk onto any California prison and I'm going to be okay. I have all the connections. So it was more that mentality. And then being like, okay, the connection to be able to bring in the phones, or the one that had access to the tobacco, or the one to have access to the drugs. I figured, okay, this is my little world in here, and I'm at the top of this little world right now, and I get to, I just get to prove myself. And then it fed into that shallow part of my ego where, okay, I'm recognized, I'm accepted, I'm liked, and all of that. So that's what it did for me at the time.
So when that switch flipped, that was essentially an identity change, right? You changed that narrative. How did that feel?
Terrifying. I mean, when I realized, okay, this part of my identity is fake. Like, what does it really mean? This part of identity is fake. And I started pulling apart each thread of my identity and how I had built this over the years to just impress people, or to just make people feel like, make me feel like I'm liked or I'm recognized. And realizing, you know what? Every single part of me is fake. I don't have any substance as a person. But I was terrified, because for me, any sense of identity, no matter how fake, would be better than no sense of identity. But fortunately, I had a bunch of books I was reading. There were people on the yard that I'd have to say, like, these were like mentors that were along the way. The saying, Andrew, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I realized there were teachers all around me all those years, but I didn't take advantage of them. But at this time, I began taking advantage of anything and everybody around me to make me a better person.
So, I mean, do you believe that getting caught and being sent to solitary, was that?
It was a blessing in disguise. That was the greatest blessing in disguise for me.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, the idea of solitary is such a difficult one. With so many, it's such a deeply problematic solution that we have in our prisons.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, just the irony of that impact on you there. I also think in hearing you talk, you and I have spent a lot of time together going into prisons, and I think you and I have talked about this idea that everybody's got to get there, right? We can't make people, we work with them through Defy, right? We can't make them have that realization, but you can kind of open that door to say, what is it like to have reflection, and make that reflection possible, right? And I think for you, it happened in this way of being in solitary, and then is that right? That then?
Yeah, I mean, it just gave me a lot of time to really reflect. Like, it just removed me from everything I was doing, and I just had a lot of time on my hand, and I was thinking a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also seen a lot of men around me that had a lot of time on their hands, and they come out worse, way worse, because they continue to build, this.
The narrative?
Spinning more stuff. Yeah, another narrative, another thread for the narrative of okay, well, I remember there were times where, before we get to, like, when I remember when I got up to Pelican Bay, and it was notorious for, okay, this is going to be, they're sending all the most high profile gang members to this prison. And that's what it was known for. So I know when I was on that bus and I got off that bus and we hit that yard, that was always in my mindset, like, okay, if something's going to happen on this yard, I'm also going to be here to prove to everybody on this yard why I and one of the most violent gang members in the state of California. And that was everybody's mindset on that yard. So it just, it's just a prison has its own culture and it has its own thought process. And a lot of it is self-created, but we all take it as, okay, well, everybody knows that. And these are the rules and we have to follow it. And it took me a long time to realize these rules that we created for ourselves in here are fake and they don't serve a purpose except just to continue to perpetuate this violence on each other.
Yeah. I think I think it's such an important piece to say that, you could have gone either way at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You could have gone in the moment of, I'm in solitary, my legend is growing, right? And my narrative, I'm going to double down on that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But instead you went into this place of, that's not who I want to be anymore. And it sounds like you had a couple of triggers there that, opened that up for you. So then you hear the sparrow in the razor wire, and then you said, you mentioned you suddenly, all these teachers appeared to you, right? Like what you said there. And one of those teachers was somebody named Donnie, right? And were you talking to Donnie before the sparrow, before you heard the sparrow?
Yes. I was talking to Donnie before the sparrow. He was also one of the key components. He's in the story. He has a big part in my story in there.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit how, it sounds like you had this moment, this questioning of your identity, right? Which was, you basically had a tearing down that happened here. And then you came out of that, and then talk about tell us a little bit about your, why you decided to start talking to Donnie, and what did that mean for you?
Well, so Donnie, me and him got connected. It was funny because
tell us who Donnie is. I should have. Who is Donnie in the story?
So Donnie was one of these other men that was incarcerated. I saw him. There was a group of guys there. They called themselves Real Talk, and they used to come into the buildings, and there was like 4 or 5 of them, and they would talk to us. They would have they would just get up and do a talk, and there'd be all the other prisoners. We stand there and listen to them. And I remember the first time I heard Donnie speaking, I was in awe of what he was saying. But yet because he's like, you guys don't have to be here. The courts have started to rule this way. What you are thinking about prison as it is, you can start trying to apply yourselves to go home. And he started saying all these things. But then I was also reading like the law as it came. It was this law that was called In re Lawrence. I saw under the parameters, they said the factor of suitability of somebody that can parole is, this is their first arrest, doesn't have violence, not involved with gangs. Like there were all these things. And then on the other side of the chart was the factors of unsuitability was multiple arrests, continuing to get in trouble while incarcerated, violence, gang members, things like that. And I fell under every factor of unsuitability. So even when I saw the law was starting to change, there was still a part of me that did not believe it applied to me, because I go, I don't know. I've never been to the board. I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't think they're going to ever let me go anyway.
So, Donnie was one of those teachers that you had that, helped you continue in your personal growth. I know there was somebody named Ralphie who was also a teacher to you. In helping you think, and part of your journey that you talk about in the book is learning how to express that you care for somebody. And which I think so many of us take for granted, of like, well, of course I can share that I care for somebody, but when I was reading your book, what I was reading was, the ability to share feelings in that way was something that you were learning in this process, and even sort of even accessing those feelings, whether they were feelings of anger and shame or feelings of love, right? That those were things you were learning how to access and share. So, I know Ralphie was one of those people, and he talked to you. Well, he talked to you about how you shared those feelings with your mom. So give us a little bit of background on Ralphie, and you got there. And then I know there's a passage. I'd love for you to share the passage about that moment when you shared your feelings with your mom.
Okay. Ralphie was one of my bunkies. This is later on. Donnie had gone home already. I had been on this, this transformation path for about, I would say by that time, 2-3 years. And Ralphie and I, we were bunking so we could sit there and talk, and we just always talk about like, you know, how or laugh about our family dynamics. Like my mom doesn't know how to express emotion. So the only thing she expresses is just by cooking. She can cook. I know she loves me, and when she's feeling bad or she feeling extra loving towards, she'll cook. But she never once told me that she loved me. I mean, after my father died, we never talked about his death. She didn't ask, how are you feeling? I know she never told me she loved me as a little kid. So it was just one day where Ralphie and we were talking about it, and you know, Ralphie being who he was, he challenged me. He said, you know what, why do you have to wait for your mom to say, I love you? Shouldn't it be on us to change the legacy and to keep what we like, but change what we don't moving forward? Why can't you tell your mom you love her? Which I knew he was right. But yeah, so in the book, this passage is leading up to it on my struggle with being able to tell my mom if I could love her or not. But I knew, well, I told Ralphie, okay, I'm going to do it. And then it was a Sunday. I used to call home every Sunday to my mom. And so then that Sunday, I'm walking down to the stairs, and Ralphie up on his bunk in his way says, have a good talk with your mom, friendo. Tell her I love her too. But you know, he was being sarcastic about it. But I knew he's gonna wait for me when I come up. He was gonna say like, did you committed to saying this? Did you do it, and what happened? So this is that passage. This is like, okay. So I get on the call, and my mom picks up the phone. So I'll read that from there. Hello, Gong. I heard my mom on the other end. Gong was Vietnamese for child, and it sounded so tender. Hi, Mom, how was your week? This was how our conversations went every Sunday, with me asking how her week went, and her updating me with whatever was going on in her life. She was telling me about work, and then began telling me about my little niece and how cute she was. Many times, like today, I was amused at what she saw as important and affirmed whatever she was talking about. Every 5 minutes or so, our call would be interrupted with the robotic voice reminding us that this call is monitored and recorded, and from an inmate at a California state prison. My mother continued after the recording stopped, and I realized after all these years in prison, I would one day like to just have a conversation that was not interrupted or timed in any way. I was not even sure exactly what she was talking about this morning, but I was intentional about being present with her. She continued talking, then the voice interrupted again. You have 60 seconds. She sighed. I like talking to you, Gong. Me too, Mom. Does she not realize that I did not even talk for the whole 14 minutes? Anything else going on? I was stalling, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I knew the operator would interrupt again with a final 30-second warning. No, that's it, Gong. She was silent. The seconds ticked by, and part of me was hoping that she had hung up prematurely. I stood up from my seat and could feel the sweat on my palms. You have 30 seconds, the robotic message reminded us. I knew it was now or never. I knew Ralphie would be waiting on me at our bunk area to see what happened. I gripped the phone. Okay, Mom, you have a good week, okay? Yes, Gong. I braced my left hand on the wall and nervously sputtered. I love you. I heard the intake of her breath on the other end, and before she could respond, I hung up the phone.
I really love the description, the way you write about that, and the working up the courage for that moment. What I'm curious. Now you've put your story out there, right? How did your mom receive the book?
Oh, she heard some of it when I was reading some parts to her as I finished writing it. But I gave her an advanced copy of the book, and it was like, I think last week or the week before, I can't remember. I was it was after like one of our work calls, and I came in. She goes, "Hey, are you ready for lunch?" And I went in, and there's a big meal made, and we were eating. And then she brought some flan. She doesn't, she makes amazing flan, but suddenly she surprised me with some flan. And I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And I started eating that. And I started eating, and she says, I started reading some of your book this morning. I said, okay. And then I realized, oh, this is why she made the food. There's something going on here. And she goes, I only got to chapter 3. I got to the chapter to where your father died, and I can't read anymore for now. So she hasn't read any since, but still in her way, she still can't tell me she loves me. But then she just cooked up a big meal and had flan, and that. So it was funny because one day, I think one of my other friends had also read the book, and we were talking on the phone, and he says, and he was out, my mom was standing nearby, and he was talking to me, and he asked me, he's like, does your mom still have a problem telling you she loves you? I go, yeah. And then I go, my mom still can't tell me she loves me. And mom like looked up at me, and I said, Mom, I love you. And she goes, thank you. And that was it. She didn't say I love you too. Then she just goes back to doing her work in the kitchen. So yeah, that's my mom.
Yeah. Well, I think well, first of all, having tasted your mom's food, I can certainly attest that it is very delicious. And I know you were telling me before that she doesn't make flan very often. That's a sort of a special occasion food. So that was a big moment. And I do look forward to tasting that flan one day. But so your mom got through pieces of it, and as that certainly was occurring to me as reading that chapter, I just think, wow, I wonder how Kwan's mom is going to receive this information, receive this book. But also during the story, I was just thinking about all the people who you talk about in the story, and I think it's when you write a book and you put it out there, right, you lose control of your story in some ways, right? Yeah. Because anybody can now access this piece of you and this story of you, right? And you can't decide who reads it or hears about it or not, right? And I would imagine there's been both expected and unexpected reactions, impacts of that. Well, I got a couple questions about that, but one is, did you expect that? Were you ready for that? And then secondly, I'd love to know about some of both those expected and unexpected interactions that came from having put it out there.
Yeah. One of the things that I knew, like part of like what we were doing at Scribe, when Scribe is the publishers that were helping me to get the book out. And one of the things they say is, because these were brought up on calls, like people said, like, am I supposed to say this about somebody? How do I say it without, because I'm portraying my mom as somebody that can't express emotions well, and how will she take it? But I realized what it did for me to be able to tell my mom I love her. And if my book is for the men inside, for the guys left behind, then that was where I kept my focus. It's not about me, and unfortunately, it's not about my mom. This book is for the guys inside, and hopefully where they could get their lessons of maybe being able to express some emotions. That's what I kept going back to for whenever I got to places where I may have to, shed light on some people that may perhaps does not cast them in that great of a light, or cast them in a terrible light. But that's the way I had to remind myself.
And so tell me a little bit about some of the reactions you got, both ones that, people you expected to read it, and maybe people you didn't expect it to or hear about it, or people you didn't expect to hear about it.
Wow, I don't know where to start. Like, I know where, like, when some people started reading some individual chapters that I had sent out in the beginning, and they write me back like long emails and say, oh my God, I realize I have to forgive people in my life, or oh my God, there's these lessons in here. This book is written for more than just people inside. There's a lot of lessons. Like, even to one of the most endearing ones lately was my aunt, who's also in the book. she read the book, and I think she was on the call earlier. I hope she's still on. If she is, like, hi, go away, I love you. But she was on the book, and she had wrote me a long email after she read the book, and then she followed up with a couple more emails, and then the next day we got to get on a call, and she got to share, like, I can't remember how long we talked, maybe 3-4 hours, and she was just telling me stories about my father in Vietnam, and it was cool to hear her tell me, like, I saw your father in you when you shared this. I saw your father in you, and it just, I don't know, it brought me to tears, but they were tears of joy.
Yeah. You also told me about your sister reading.
Yes. Oh, my sister, that was heartbreaking, because my sister also read it, and then she said, like, I didn't know that Dad did all these things, because and I go, yeah. She goes, how come I don't remember? Because my father had created the Vietnamese Refugee Association. He had done a lot of amazing things in our community to help the refugees when we first came to the United States. My sister didn't know, and my sister didn't even remember the car rides that I used to go with my father. And then I go, what do you remember? And then she tells me, the only thing I remember, that all I remember growing up was when I grew up, Dad already had leukemia. So that broke my heart, because I was like, damn, my poor little sister, she didn't know my father any other way. She only knew my dad as the man that kept on going in and out of the hospital and just laid in bed. And then she's expected to go to church with me and my brother, and we just pray and we pray and we pray. And then he passes away. So yeah, so I don't know. There's been, yeah, the response from different people, like, even like people that know me, and then there's people that don't know me, and then will just email me and say, oh, this book made me feel this way. I'm examining this, like, and then, like, one of our Defy volunteers posted something the other day where she said she was just, after she read the book, she was just driving, and then she just broke down crying uncontrollably, because she realized this is what people are experiencing in prison at this time, and that it was real. So it broke her heart. So I don't know. I don't know what to say right now on that.
Anything that's been very hard about this release for you?
Not that I could think of. Yeah, not that I think. I don't know. I was nervous leading up to it. I didn't know how people were going to receive it. I didn't know, like, even I know some of my family members that didn't know me all these years, or only knew me as the guy that went to prison for murder. I didn't know how they were going to take it, but I was like, you know what?
Had just been away.
Yeah, or just the one that had been away. So, oh, that's one of the black sheep of the family. We just won't talk to him. So, I don't know. But then I just realized, at the end of the day, it's, like I said, this book is for the guys inside. I hope that they could find some small, kernel of freedom, like how I did when I was in there, like way before I came home. And hopefully, if they could get it, get a little spark of hope, and then from there build and find their own freedom in there.
Yeah. Where are you now in your journey, and what do you still struggle with?
Wow, where do I start? I mean, before the book launch, like, okay, what are the guys inside gonna think? Are they going to identify with this? Even like some of my buddies that were locked up, like Ralphie's read the book, loved it. Donnie's read the book and said it's amazing, and some of the guys that have come home, but then there's still a part of me that's scared that, what if the guys in there read it and say, you're not telling us nothing. This doesn't help me. Like, who are you?
Yeah, but where are you? Right? We talk about this in your book. You detail this arc, right? But you and I both know that the journey is long, right?
Yeah.
It didn't end. It's not over, right? For you, you're still on this journey, right? So yeah. Where are you in that journey of continuing transformation? Where do you still find struggle? As you move through life and as you grapple with your past and where you came from and what you want to do.
Well, let me see. Where do I still struggle? I mean, plenty of places. Like, okay, okay. The book has been launched, right? Now it's out there for the world, and I'm thinking, what if my neighbor reads it? What are they gonna think? What if they judge me? So there's a part of me is like, what if I don't fit in this neighborhood, or what if people don't accept me here?
So all the stigmas of reentry, right? That's the same. That's the version of that, right? Of
a version of that. I mean,
syndrome.
I remember when I laid out my fear-solving exercise, I even thought, what is the Defy team going to think of me? Like when I put this out there, like what if my coworkers read this? You know, what are my friends that only know one part of me going to think this? What are they going to think of me? Yeah, they're you know, what else do I struggle with? Yeah, I still struggle with my fear of not fitting in. I still struggle with being accepted. I still struggle with you name it. I still struggle. But now at least the only difference now is like at least I'm a little bit more mindful of it. So before it was just automatic. Okay, let's say somebody says something stupid. I know what to do. I know how to react. Now, if somebody says something that I view as stupid, I don't have to react. I can just go, okay, I can acknowledge it, and then I can at least slow it down in my thoughts, or just even ask myself, like, why do I have to view it this way? Why do I have to judge him this way? So now it's more a reminder for myself, stop judging somebody else. Or, oh, there you go again, Quan. There you go. There's that little seed of judgment. So at least I caught it, and at least I can try to remove it, continue to remove it.
Well, part of that journey I know is your work with Defy, and why you work with people who are coming home. We as an organization, right? We spend time with people who are still incarcerated. How does this work fit into your journey? Why do you keep doing it? You know, it's I think some people, they come home, they do not want to think about prison anymore, right? And they're just ready to be done with that chapter. And it seems like you are, I mean, not only you sort of embrace that chapter, literally, right, in your writing, mm-hmm. but also you continue to do this work. Why is the work that you do at Defy, why are you still doing it? Why are you still here? Like what?
I enjoy it. It does not feel like work to me. It feels like I'm making a difference in people's lives. I'm helping. You know, one of my favorite parts of my job is when somebody comes home and I get to call them and I get to say, you know, welcome home. And just be there and listen to their joy, and then just to listen to what they're talking about and how they're excited about their future, and when they're talking about you know, rebuilding relationships with family. And then I get to be there to see them from the beginning, and then get to see, you know, the arc of their journey 6 months or a year after they've been home, and how they're applying themselves. And I get to be a part of it. So it continues to be, I would have to say, enriching to my soul. I mean, I'm still able to help make a difference and make an impact through them.
Yeah. This is my last question, then we're going to open up for some audience. But as you think about that work that you do, right, and you've been doing this work for several years, do you think the writing of this book has changed how you approach that work with people either who are still inside or people who have come home?
Yeah, because I would have to say, it just makes me even more patient with them and with myself. Writing the book was healing for me still. I mean, like out here, I mean, I detail in the book like my first board hearing, and how hurtful the words from the deputy commissioner were at that time. Here I am home, what is it, my first hearing was 2013, and I started writing the book in 2019, right? So this is 6 years after she said some stuff to me in the parole board. I had my parole transcripts, and I'm reading it, and even reading it at that time, 6 years after, and I'm home already, and it still hurt me. So I can only imagine guys in there that have been told, you know, you're a monster, you're a loser, you're this. So when I go during that time when writing process, I go, I wish I could finish my book now. So hopefully these guys in here can get something out of it. I mean, like COVID now, I have not been able to go to prison. None of us have been able to go to prison for over 6 months. I miss them. I miss them all in there. And I think about them. I go, I hope they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for all your answers, for answering all these questions here. And I know we've got a number of people with some questions from our audience. So I want to actually call on Susie Clark.
I'm interested in hearing how you first connected with Defy.
Okay, I first connected with Defy when I was still doing my life sentence at Solano. I heard that they had a program that's called Defy Ventures, and it was a pilot program, and it was talking about we're going to transform your hustle. So it talks about entrepreneurship, and I go, okay, that's me. I signed up for it. It was like a 30-page packet that we had to fill out at the time, which is very different from most programs in prison. You just sign up your name and your CDC, and you're just putting on a wait list, and you get brought up into this group. This one, we actually had to fill out a packet. And I go, oh, this is the real deal. And then I went to the gym. There was like 50, 60 of us. I got to meet the CEO of Defy at that time, her and her team. And then they had our first coaching day when they brought like 50, 60 people in from the streets, from, you know, the tech and venture capitalist space and all other entrepreneurs. And I go, man, this program is the real deal. And the great part about it is, like, yes, it was entrepreneurship, but there was about 60, 70%. A lot of it is character and personal development. So that also resonated with me.
Next, we're going to have Sage with her question. There she is. Hi, Sage.
Hi, nice to see you all.
Yeah.
Quan, first of all, super big congratulations. This book was incredible, and your vulnerability and growth is truly inspiring. On page 205, you talk about the self-examination that you've had the opportunity to do, and how on the outside, you sometimes feel your words aren't landing as you'd hoped when trying to practice those skills that you'd sharpened. And I'd love to know if you feel like you encounter more folks on the outside who haven't done much self-examination, or if it is more that you kind of got to select your own community in a different way on the inside, and how sort of the inside and outside is different with regard to self-examination.
I love that question. I would have to say, so I'm not sure if most of the guys that I was associating with later on during the prison time, and even guys that came into our groups, so they began to work on themselves. So I don't know if it's because now I come home and a lot of people have not had that opportunity. So yes, a lot of people out here, I've struggled with communicating effectively with them, or they have become angry and I'm trying to diffuse it, and it doesn't work. So yeah, but I don't know if that's representative of how everybody is out here. It's just, I just had these things, and it's because in there I knew which people were on the path and suddenly we're associating. So there was not this inability to communicate. Whereas out here, sometimes we're stuck, let's say, in my apartment complex, or just in line at Costco, or, you know, on the streets, and there's a traffic jam and people are cutting each other off and they're going crazy. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, but I have experienced a lot more people out here that have an inability to communicate well.
Thank you. Follow-up question to that is just, how has your community of lifers helped you with this since your release?
Oh, so here I mean, my community life server. So part of my like during this post, I mean, when the book launched on Tuesday, and you know this, Sage, I had actually shared this with you, but I had posted about the launch of my book on several platforms, and then I posted about the launch of my book in this Asian entrepreneur network that I'm part of, and to let people know to support it. Well, one of the people that posted back on that was actually a woman who was the best friend of the man that I had shot and killed. And when I posted it, I have always called, you know, and I posted it on January 15th, 1999, I shot and killed Min Nguyen, and I put his name and I put that date very particularly, and it's intentionally. So she posted and read it and said, you know, that she struggled with it, but then the way she wrote it, she actually communicated very well, and it was very, I could tell the way she wrote it back. It was, this woman was coming from a place of, like, she was also very forgiving already, but then it tore me up. I didn't know what to do. I was so sad. So I actually reached out to 2 other former lifers. One of them was Ralphie in the book, and I let him know this is what happened. And Ralphie had to remind me, Quan, this is a blessing for you. You know, he goes, we talked about this all the time, that we want to help and give back and provide healing for those we have harmed. And this is a person you've harmed. Here's an opportunity to provide healing for them. And I go, you're right. So her and I have tentatively been dialoguing, and I'm being very careful and intentional in what I'm asking more. It's what I'm just more listening, and yeah. So that's how my community of lifers still continues to support me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, next we're gonna hear from John Jackson.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, Quan.
Hey, John.
Good to see you again. I had a question as I was listening. I haven't read your entire book, but something I picked up on was acceptance. I just want to know what caused you to seek acceptance, and how do you deal with rejection now? And how do you accept yourself? And how do you deal with rejection now? And have you realized that seeking acceptance was like maybe causative factors or a problem in your past?
Yeah. So the acceptance issues for me began when I grew up in Provo, Utah. We came here to the U.S. when I was just a toddler. I did not feel like I fit in Utah because we stuck out. Our family is Vietnamese. Utah's 99% mostly white. I am also, we were also Roman Catholic, and Utah's predominantly Mormon. So that's where the seeds of acceptance began for me. We moved out here to California when I was 10 because my father's condition was getting worse with leukemia. So this is the first time in California that I was going to school with African Americans and Hispanics and Asians and other Vietnamese. And to them, I felt I did not fit in because lots of them began teasing me because they said I was whitewashed. I did not speak Vietnamese well, and they did not speak English well. So that is where a lot of that came into me. And then I know that is where a lot of the gang fulfilled that hole, or where I didn't feel like I fit in. The gang made me, when I was inside it, I was just like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is where I fit in for once in my life. So do I still struggle with acceptance? Yes, but I think today it's not like I struggle with something. Let's say I go to an entrepreneur's event, and then, damn, am I fitting in here? To what's going on? I mean, when I flew out to Austin to begin writing my book, and each person began introducing themselves. Oh, my book is written for this, and it's written for, like, there was a person, I think it was she introduced herself like she's a chief marketing officer, and she's writing books for companies that's going to scale up to 250 million. And each person went around introducing themselves, one more impressive than the other. And as I sat there, I go, crap, what am I doing here? I think they messed up for bringing me here I don't know if I have a book. I don't know what I'm going to write about. And so, yeah, I still struggle with that. I think the difference today, is that I can acknowledge that and not try to overcompensate or just act out on it. It's just, okay, this is something that I can see. I'm okay with it, and then I can just move on.
I have one more. Thank you, Quan. It's about when you talked about telling your mom you love her on the phone, and yeah, it seemed like you had a big fear of doing that, of saying I love you to your mom. And was it you knew she loved you, but was there a fear of rejection or not being accepted there? What was the fear of saying I love you to your mom?
I had never told my mom I loved her. She had never told me. And up to that point in my life, not to that point, but a lot of my years, I never expressed emotions. Like, I just stuffed it into the corner. I couldn't tell anybody I loved them. Like, even when I had girlfriends, I can't tell them I love them. It just always felt very uncomfortable. And then to tell my mom of all people, and what is she gonna say? So to me, I didn't know what she was gonna say. Like, it would make it awkward. I didn't know. So yeah, I was terrified. My heart was thumping. I remember that day. Today, does it make me feel uncomfortable? A little bit, but I can tell her now.
Thank you for sharing, Quan. I really admire
You're
you and
welcome.
respect you.
Thanks
so much, John. All right, next we're going to have Carrie. Hi, Carrie.
Hi,
Hi.
Carrie.
Hi, Quan, thank you so much for doing this. And thank you, Andrew. This book is so amazing, not just the story, which is so amazing, but the writing is really wonderful. It's really spectacular. So congratulations on the launch. My question is, you say a lot that this is for the guys inside, and you want to help spark change in the guys inside. And you were facing down a long sentence. And so for people who have little hope of parole, who have life without parole, how do you see this book, or are there other things that either can be done inside or with the community outside to help spark that kind of hope, to help spark that kind of transformation for people who maybe don't have that?
So I'll answer the first part I remember. Is for yes, it's for the men inside. And even if they have a life without the possibility of parole, I mean, one of my good friends just came home. He had a life without possibility. His sentence was commuted. We were doing a lot of this stuff on the yard together. I have already found my freedom, and he had already found his freedom. So my hope is that guys in there that are stuck in really dark places can still realize that they have a choice, that a lot of it has to do with just personal responsibility in their lives, and that they have a choice to choose happiness in this place. And then for me, it just became like extremely liberating. I was not stuck to fulfilling others' expectations of me anymore. Yeah, so that would be my answer to the first part of your question. I think I forgot this for the second part you were asking.
No, it was just if there's anything that we as friends or allies in the community, or if there's anything that we can do to help support that transformation or change, other than buying the book.
Oh my God, there's so many ways to help them in there. I mean, what you're already doing by going into prison and volunteering. I mean, supporting great organizations like Defy or other reentry organizations. There's so much things to do, and I think there's I remember when I was at prison, when Susie asked about like Defy and how it felt to me, with the first time when we're inside a group and there's volunteers that come in from the outside, how it feels is, you go to hot yoga out here, and when they open up the doors and that cool, fresh air, that refreshing, cool air, and how it feels like, that's how it felt for me when seeing people from the streets coming in with their smiles, the colorful clothes, because we're all in there in prison blues. And then after that, getting to know them, it just continued to nurture my soul. Like there's a couple people on this call that were part of Susie. I knew her from AVP. That was one of our fellow facilitators. So they continue to nurture that part of me that was trying to become a better person.
Thank you.
So that's how you can help. Mhm.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we've got Tammy. Hi, Tammy.
Oh, hi, Tammy.
How are you?
I'm
And
doing well. Oh, hi, Tracy.
it's so good to see you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
My question for you is just with all that's going on in the world now, what most inspires you and what gives you hope?
I remember when, the world as we knew it changed and everybody got locked down. I went downstairs one morning and my backyard has a little fountain, and I saw the little birds like bathing in it, and there was a little chipmunk running along the fence, and a hummingbird would come to my feeder. And I saw the world's locked down, but the world still moves on. I see all these animals still feeding and everything. So it just, for me, I don't know, it brought me peace at that moment where I told myself, okay, what's going to happen for me after? What's going to happen to all of us after when things go back to normal? So I don't know. I think I can only say that inspired me to look for ways that this is not as bad as we created it in our heads, even though yes, what's going on is bad, but it's just, I don't know, that's what gave me my lift for that day. And that's what I go back to, okay, come out to nature, and this was what helped settle me down.
Mm-hmm. One other question I have for you, and are there ways to, given that COVID has really locked down volunteers going into the prison to do that work, are there ways that the prison system has found to bring programming into the prison system during this time of COVID, or do we just have to wait until it's over? And how can we support our friends inside in the interim?
I know, at Defy, because I can speak for at Defy, what we're doing behind the scenes is, I know there have been talks with the California prison system on bringing some of our coursework in through different technology means and all that, but then that's its own challenges right now. We're still sending our coursework inside, and then they're working on it and coming out. And I know, even on this launch week, everything that's sold, I'm matching it, and we're going to give it to Defy since they already have infrastructure, and we're going to be donating it. And so there's still things that we can do. And I don't know, we can connect after the call, and then I could give you other options and things like that. Just let everybody on this call know also, if you heard Andrew introduce me earlier as been described as a mighty warrior, magician, and a mountain of goodness. It was inside prison when Tammy right here, she wrote it on one of our sweet sheets. She had wrote that to me, and she wrote that to me and just says, "You are one of the greatest treasures of my life," or something. I still had that, and I just always carried that. So thank you for giving me that description and that inspiration and hope back then.
Still true for me. I love you.
Love you. Bye, Tracy.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, we've got a couple questions, probably about two more. We're gonna take Raphael next. Hey, Raphael.
Hey, you guys see me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Quan, congratulations.
Hey, Raphael.
Hey, how you doing, man? Really congratulations about the book release. This is a really profound and inspirational story. So my question for you is, what piece of advice would you give to kids out there today that might be on a similar path, that are considering initiating into a gang, or may already be in a gang? What's the advice that you have for those kids that you wish that you'd been? I guess the advice you wish you had heard when you were younger.
Okay. I'm not sure if I would give advice in more. I would maybe ask questions, and maybe open space for them to build trust and share with me. And I'm saying that knowing full well it's not going to be okay. I just meet a kid that's already on the wrong path and he's going to just trust me right away. It's like, if this is something that I want to really do, then let's say if it's a young nephew or something, or one of my friends kids or something, then this is somebody I would have to build trust with and then ask and just make a space. Yeah, I don't know if I would give advice. If anything, I would perhaps, after they trust me, maybe I just share with them like, hey, you know what? I remember I used to think like this, and this is when I used to run in the gang. But because I know when I was a young kid, no guy could really tell me, especially some older guy. But I think if people had just asked me, maybe, then I would have been perhaps able to share. I mean, like, I even can go back to when I lost my father. It was never asked of me. It was more telling me, oh, you should feel like this. This is what needs to be done, or whatever, a lot of that. So yeah, for myself, it's no advice, just giving them space to share.
Thanks,
Thanks, Raphael. Thanks for the question. All right, Tracy.
Hi.
Hi, Tracy. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you can't see me. I'm on my phone in a parking lot. I didn't make it home in time for the start of the call. But first of all, I love your answer to that last question, Quan. I just love it. No answer. Yeah, wonderful. And I also would like to congratulate you from the bottom of my heart on this outrageous accomplishment of making your experience and message available to the world, and specifically for the guys inside. I have a comment and then a question. And the comment is, when I read the book, and I've read it a couple of times now, I realized the transformation you're describing, that's when we were working together. That's when we knew each other. And I didn't have in my conscious mind, I mean, I knew you kind of kept getting brighter and deeper and calmer and kind of more enlightened as the months went on, but I didn't really understand what this process was in you. And I guess I want you to know I feel really touched to have witnessed in front of my very eyes this process of a human being transforming himself. So
okay, thank you. Which Tracy is this one?
This is Tracy, who's so tender.
Oh,
Solano.
Goodness. Hi. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, that Tracy. Yeah, so when I went back and looked, when I started with AVP and then I coordinated with the dates in your book, I realized, wait, I knew him way before, or right before that journey was really starting to heat up. So yeah, it was just in hindsight. Now, my question is not really, doesn't have to do with the purview of your book. So you're very welcome to say, I can't answer, I don't have an answer. But it is what comes up in terms of what I wish I could hear you talk about, or maybe you or anybody talk about, that after I started working in prison with AVP, my understanding of what role gangs play in the lives of young people changed. Before that, I had all these images of gangs and how horrible and all the evil and blah, blah, blah. But after talking to and reading people like you and the other guys, it's clear there is a function of belonging, of protection, of something, particularly for when young people don't have a strong family in these really, really difficult situations. And I'm wondering, just in your mind, do you have any sense of an alternative to what gangs provide right there before the kids get all the way in? Is there, I know, when I think about it, I can't, my mind can't even come up with anything. And I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts about what besides gangs could be in place that would deflect that kind of being swept up into this energy, which then ends up with people in prison?
Well, I mean, I know what the gangs provide, and it would be hard. So is your question, what could be done? Can you ask me clear the
Yeah,
question?
is there
Because I'm a little confused.
Yeah, is there an alternative to gangs for young people in difficult situations where here's the gang offering you something, and what else? Is there any other alternative for them that you can imagine? You know, that they're not, you know, a lot of them have dysfunctional homes, so they're drawn to what the gangs provide.
We're also talking about, let's say a lot of them come from neighborhoods where this is like what they grow up with and what they know. So, I mean, if we're talking about, you're talking about a whole type of social systems change right there. So I'm not sure. You know, or let's say let's say if there's some type of, when they're first arrested or brought to juvenile hall, like how are they treated there? So that I'm not sure how to answer that one. I'm sorry.
I wanted you to have a miracle answer. I wanted you to have this wonderful, like, oh, we just need to do this. So then maybe it's as you're doing that. It's that when people do end up in the prison system, then we work with them while they're in the system, and then when they come out,
say, yeah, like even the gang officers or how they interact with the gangs, like there has to be that type of system change from the beginning. But I mean, if it's just, okay, these kids are already in the gangs, and so they're already written off, and we're just gonna lock them up, and then we'll just start collecting them inside the prisons and write them off as this is the end of their life, then that's something different. But then, so I think what we're talking about here is a whole different, you know, and it would be changing the whole type of system. And I'm glad maybe that is something that needs to be brought up. But yeah, I don't have the answer for that. I wish I did. I wish I had the magic wand to change that.
Thanks for your question, Tracy.
Thank you.
And we're getting pretty close to the end here, but I think that is a nice segue into, you know, closing out here. One of the questions I saw here was about organizations and the connection between inside prison and outside. And, you know, Kwan's role at Defy is on that, greeting people when they come home, to connect the work we do inside to that return to society and to help people be successful when they come home. And Tracy, you know, I heard your question. You know, this is a system, you know, and you know, at Defy, right, we intersect with that system in a specific way. And you know, I think we do a good job, and Kwan's part of that work that we do, but there are no magic bullets, and you know, it's going to take a lot of work in a lot of different areas, you know, in that system, whether that's, you know, starting with, you know, what happens in school and dropout prevention to, you know, prenatal care, parenting, preschool, up into, you know, where do the interventions happen? And the interventions that we're doing is in prison. We're catching people at the end of that cycle, right? And then we continue that intervention when people come home, so they have an ability to be successful in reentry. And I would love for everybody on the call to join us in that. But I'm going to let Kwan close us out a little bit here, to close out here. But I want to thank everybody for being part of what we're doing, and encourage everybody to continue to be part of what we're doing, either as a volunteer or, you know, if you have the means to support what we're doing financially, that's how we continue to have people like Kwan welcome someone home, and how we're able to go inside and be part of their transformative journey. So we posted a couple of links in the chat, and I want to encourage everybody certainly to buy this book. And I'm gonna let Kwan tell you why it's important to buy the book and how that can help people inside. So Kwan, tell us a little about why people should buy this book.
Yeah, for this week, every book that's purchased is, I'm going to be matching it and giving to somebody in prison. So hopefully, because I know the mentality of the men in there is they share books, especially ones that will, that they think like other people might like. So yeah, help me get the book into prison, help us to continue to make an impact and spark change. Yeah, thank you for believing in second chances and in the human capacity to change.
Yeah, as something I repeat that I heard from Quan years ago, which is all people are redeemable.
Yep.
And Quan, I couldn't be prouder than to be on that mission with you here at Defy. So thanks everybody. We're right at time. We will have the video available, which we'll post. And if you have questions about the book, questions about Quan, questions about Defy, you can get in touch. Quan at defyventures.org, Andrew at defyventures.org. We'd love to hear from you. And let's keep this conversation going. Buy a book when you get off. If you haven't bought it, buy 10. So we can get a book in the hands of every Defy EIT that's inside. Check out Quan's website, quanxwin.com.
Or they could just, if it's easier, because some people might be confused with trying to spell my name correctly. So they could just go sparrowintherazorwire.com and they'll point right to it.
Sparrowintherazorwire.com. That is easier.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks all for joining today. This has been great. Thanks for all the great questions. Quan, thanks for writing an awesome book. Buy the book. There it is. Oh, sort of. There it is. All right, everybody. Have a great evening.